The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets wet and shiny like a mirror. 12-year-old Lily walked slowly toward the big building she'd seen 100 times before. Her sneakers were old and worn out, with a small hole near the toe that let water in whenever it rained. Every step she took on the fancy marble floor left a little mark, and she could feel people staring. This wasn't just any building. This was the Hartwell Music School, the kind of place where rich kids learn to play piano and violin. Lily had walked past it so many times, always stopping to look through the windows. She'd watched students in their neat uniforms carrying shiny instrument cases laughing with their friends. They looked like they belonged to a different world. But today was special. Today Lily wasn't just walking past. Today she was going inside. 3 days ago she'd seen a poster taped to a streetlight. It said the music school was having an open audition. Anyone could try out for one scholarship spot. Just one chance for someone to study music for free. When Lily read those words, her heart had started beating faster. She'd read that poster 5 times just to make sure it was real. Now here she was, standing in the entrance hall with its high ceiling and expensive paintings on the walls. Her hands were shaking a little as she held the piece of paper with the audition information. She'd kept it safe in her pocket for 3 days, taking it out sometimes just to make sure she hadn't dreamed the whole thing. The woman at the front desk looked up when Lily approached. Her eyes moved from Lily's face down to her muddy shoes, then back up to her patched jacket. The woman's lips pressed together in a thin line. "Can I help you?" she asked, but her voice didn't sound helpful at all. "I'm here for the audition," Lily said quietly. "The open audition for the scholarship." The woman's eyebrows went up so high they almost disappeared into her hair. She looked at Lily like she'd just said something crazy. For a long moment she didn't say anything. Then she sighed and pulled out a small card with a number on it. "Number 47, she said, handing it over. "The waiting room is down that hall." Lily took the card and thanked her even though the woman had already looked away. She walked down the hallway, her wet shoes making squeaky sounds that seemed way too loud in the quiet building. The waiting room was packed with kids and their parents. Lily stopped in the doorway, suddenly feeling like maybe this was a mistake. Every child there looked perfect. Their clothes were expensive and clean. Their hair was neatly combed. Some of them held violin cases that probably cost more than everything Lily owned. She found an empty chair in the corner and sat down, trying to make herself as small as possible. But it didn't work. She could feel eyes on her from every direction. 2 girls sitting nearby were wearing matching pink dresses that looked brand new. They whispered to each other, looking right at Lily, then covered their mouths and giggled. Lily pretended not to notice. She'd gotten good at that over the years. A boy with perfectly styled hair sat across from her. He nudged his friend and pointed at Lily's shoes without even trying to hide it. "Where'd she come from?" he said, not quite whispering. His friend laughed. The parents were even worse. One mother actually pulled her daughter closer when Lily walked past, like Lily might be contagious or something. Another father was complaining loudly to anyone who would listen. "I don't understand why they let just anyone walk in off the street," he said. "This used to be a respectable institution. There should be standards." Lily kept her eyes down and focused on the worn photograph in her jacket pocket. She touched it gently, like she always did when things got hard. It was a picture of her mother from a long time ago, back when she was young and healthy. In the photo, her mother was sitting at a piano, her fingers on the keys, smiling at whoever was taking the picture. That photo was one of the only things Lily had left of her mother. That, and the memories of songs hummed softly at bedtime, of melodies that seemed to fill their tiny apartment even when everything else was falling apart. "First time here?" Lily looked up. An old man in a janitor's uniform was standing nearby with a cleaning cart. His face was kind, with deep wrinkles around his eyes that came from smiling a lot. "Yes," Lily said quietly. "Nervous?" he asked. She nodded. The old man smiled. "That's natural. But let me tell you something. The piano in that audition hall is special. It's called a Steinway Grand. Finest instrument in the whole building. You treat it with respect, and it'll sing for you like nothing else in the world." "Thank you," Lily whispered. The old man winked at her and moved on with his cart. Lily watched him go, feeling a tiny bit better. At least one person in this place didn't look at her like she was dirt on their shoe. The minutes crawled by. Kids were called one by one, their numbers announced over a speaker. Each time someone came back from their audition, everyone else would stare, trying to figure out how it went. Some kids came back smiling. Others looked like they might cry. Lily sat very still, her hand in her pocket touching that photograph. What she hadn't told anyone, what she couldn't tell anyone, was that she'd never had a real piano lesson in her entire life. Everything she knew, she'd taught herself. There was an old church a few blocks from where she and her grandmother lived. The pastor was nice and let Lily come in sometimes when the building was empty. In the basement, there was an ancient piano that nobody used anymore. Half the keys didn't work right and it was always out of tune, but Lily didn't care. She'd spend hours there, teaching her fingers to move the way she'd seen in videos at the public library. She'd watched hundreds of videos on the library computers, always with headphones on, watching pianists' hands move across the keys. She'd memorized pieces by listening to scratchy recordings on an old phone someone had thrown away. At night, when she couldn't sleep, she'd practice the fingering on her blanket, her hands moving through the air, playing invisible songs. But that broken church piano was nothing like what waited for her in the audition hall. What if her fingers didn't know what to do on a real piano? What if everything she'd learned on that broken instrument was wrong? Number 47. Lily's heart jumped into her throat. That was her number. Time had run out. It was now or never. She stood up on shaky legs, smoothing down her jacket even though it didn't help much. The other kids and parents watched her walk toward the door. She could hear whispers following her, could feel their judgment like cold rain on her back. But she kept walking anyway, because 5 years ago, before her mother died, she'd made a promise. She'd promised that someday she'd play music the way her mother used to. She'd promised she wouldn't let that dream die, even when everything else seemed impossible. The door to the audition hall stood in front of her now. Lily took a deep breath, touched the photograph one more time, and stepped through. The waiting room felt colder than it should have been. Lily sat in her corner chair, trying to become invisible while watching the other kids prepare for their auditions. Each one seemed so confident, so ready, like they'd been born knowing they belonged in places like this. A girl with perfect curls was practicing scales under her breath, her fingers moving in the air like she was playing an invisible piano. Her mother sat beside her, straightening the daughter's already perfect collar, whispering last-minute reminders. The girl nodded seriously, like she was preparing for battle. Across the room, a boy unpacked his sheet music from a leather folder that probably cost more than Lily's grandmother made in a month. He arranged the pages carefully, studying them with intense concentration. His father stood behind him, hands on his shoulders, saying something about breathing and focus. Everyone here had someone. Parents who could afford to bring them. Parents who knew about music and auditions and conservatories. Lily was alone except for the photograph in her pocket. Number 12. A voice called over the intercom. A small girl with glasses jumped up, clutching her music. Her mother squeezed her hand and whispered, "You've got this, sweetheart." They disappeared through the heavy wooden doors together. Lily looked down at her own number. 47. So many kids ahead of her. So many chances for the judges to find someone better. Someone who actually belonged here. The two girls in matching pink dresses were sitting directly across from her now. They weren't even trying to hide their staring anymore. One of them leaned over to whisper something to her sister, and they both giggled. Lily's face burned, but she kept her eyes down. "I can't believe they're letting just anyone audition," one of the girls said, her voice carrying across the room. "My mother said this used to be a respectable institution. Daddy said we're probably wasting our time being here with all these random people," the other girl replied. Their mother, a woman wearing more jewelry than Lily had ever seen on one person, shushed them half-heartedly. But she was looking at Lily too, with the same expression the receptionist had worn, like Lily was a stain on an otherwise clean floor. A woman sitting near them spoke up, not even bothering to lower her voice. "It's ridiculous, really. What's the point of an open audition if they're just going to give the scholarship to someone with actual training anyway? This is just for show, to make the school look democratic." Her husband nodded in agreement. "Exactly. These kids who've never had proper instruction, they're just taking up time. My son has been training with a master pianist since he was 4 years old. That's the level of dedication that deserves recognition." Lily's hands curled into fists in her lap. She wanted to stand up and walk out. She wanted to run all the way back home and forget she'd ever seen that poster about the audition. But then she thought about her mother's photograph, about all those nights practicing on broken keys, about the promise she'd made to herself. She stayed in her seat. Number 18. A boy stood up, tall and confident. He high-fived his father and walked through the doors like he owned the place. His father settled back in his chair with a satisfied smile, already certain his son would win. More time passed. The waiting room slowly emptied as numbers were called. Some kids came back smiling. Others came back looking defeated, their parents immediately starting to make excuses about why the judges were wrong or the acoustics were bad. One girl came back crying. Her mother hugged her and said loudly, "Don't worry, honey. The school isn't even that good anyway. We'll find somewhere better." But Lily could see the disappointment in both their faces. During the long wait, Lily noticed something interesting. The kids who seemed the most confident going in weren't always the ones who came back happy. A boy who'd been bragging about his training with a famous teacher came back looking pale and shaken. A girl who'd been practicing for hours in the corner stumbled out with tears streaming down her face. Maybe having expensive lessons didn't guarantee anything. Maybe the judges were looking for something else. Or maybe Lily was just trying to make herself feel better. Around number 35, a girl came back from her audition and walked straight to where Lily was sitting. She had kind eyes and dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. "Hey," she said quietly, sitting down in the now empty chair next to Lily. "Is this your first time auditioning for something like this?" Lily nodded, surprised anyone was talking to her. "Me too," the girl said. "I was so nervous in there I almost forgot how to play." She laughed a little. "But I guess I did okay. The judges seemed nice at least." "How long have you been playing?" Lily asked. "Since I was 6. My dad teaches music at a high school, so we always had a piano at home." "What about you?" Lily hesitated. "I'm self-taught. I practice at a church near where I live." The girl's eyes widened. "Really, that's amazing. I can't imagine learning without a teacher. You must be really dedicated." It was the first kind thing anyone had said to Lily all day. "Thanks," she whispered. "I'm Sophie," the girl said, offering her hand. "Lily." They shook hands and Sophie smiled. "Good luck in there. I hope you get it." "You too," Lily said, even though Sophie had already auditioned. Sophie stood up to leave, then turned back. "Hey, don't let those people get to you." She nodded toward the pink dress girls and their mother. "My dad always says music doesn't care about fancy clothes or expensive teachers. It only cares if you mean it." After Sophie left, Lily felt a little bit stronger. At least one person here didn't think she was wasting everyone's time. The old janitor came by again, this time emptying trash cans. When he reached Lily's corner, he paused. "Still here?" he asked with a gentle smile. "Number 47, Lily said, showing him her card. "Ah, well, the best things are worth waiting for." He leaned on his cleaning cart. "You know what I've noticed in my 20 years working here? The kids who are the most nervous, the ones who look like they might run away any second, those are often the ones who surprise everyone, because they care so much it scares them." "What if I mess up?" Lily asked quietly. "Then you mess up," he said with a shrug. "But at least you tried. You know how many people never even walk through those doors because they're too afraid? Just being here, that takes courage." He moved on with his cart, leaving Lily with those words. The waiting room was nearly empty now. Most of the confident kids were gone. The ones who remained looked as nervous as Lily felt. Maybe they were scholarship kids too, she thought. Kids who needed this chance as badly as she did. Number 43, only a few more now. Lily's heart started hammering harder. She pulled out her mother's photograph and looked at it for the 100th time. Her mother looked so young in the picture, so full of dreams. "I'm doing this for both of us," Lily whispered to the image. A woman sitting nearby must have heard her. She glanced over and her expression softened a little. She looked at the photograph, then at Lily's worn clothes, and something like understanding crossed her face. Number 45. Lily stood up without meaning to, then sat back down. Not yet. 2 more. The boy with the combed hair who'd made fun of her earlier came back from his audition. He didn't look happy. His father immediately started talking about how the judges didn't understand true talent, how they'd regret passing over his son. But as the boy walked past Lily, he stopped. "Good luck," he said quietly. It wasn't friendly exactly, but it wasn't mean either. Just tired. Number 46. Lily watched a quiet girl walk through the doors. She was shaking so hard Lily could see it from across the room. Her mother rubbed her back and whispered something encouraging. The girl was only gone for about 10 minutes before she came back out crying. Not sad crying, though, happy crying. Her mother hugged her tight and they left together, their joy filling the hallway. Now the waiting room was almost silent. Just Lily and 2 other kids who were after her in line. The pink dress girls and their mother had left an hour ago, their confident laughter echoing down the hallway. Lily wondered if they'd gotten the scholarship. They probably had. They probably played perfectly without any mistakes, exactly the way their expensive teachers had taught them. She almost stood up to leave right then. This was pointless. She'd been stupid to think she had a chance. But then she thought about her grandmother who'd be waiting on the stoop for her to come home. She thought about Father Miguel, who always believed in her. She thought about her mother, who'd given up everything so Lily could have a life. And she thought about that broken piano in the church basement, about all those hours of practice, about every single note she'd learned by herself in the dark, when everyone else was asleep. She'd come this far. She might as well see it through. Number 47. Lily stood up. Her legs felt shaky, but they held her weight. She walked toward the big wooden doors, her footsteps echoing in the nearly empty waiting room. This was it. Everything she'd worked for, everything she'd dreamed about. It all came down to what happened in the next few minutes. She took a deep breath, touched the photograph in her pocket one more time, and pushed open the doors to the audition hall. The audition hall was bigger than Lily had imagined. Way bigger. The ceiling stretched up so high it made her dizzy to look at it. Paintings of famous musicians hung on the walls, their eyes seeming to watch her as she walked across the polished floor. Her footsteps echoed in the huge space, and she wished desperately that they didn't. 3 people sat behind a long table near the front. The woman in the middle looked important, with her hair pulled back tight and glasses perched on her nose. That had to be the director. The man on the left was older, maybe in his 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes. The woman on the right had silver hair and the most serious expression Lily had ever seen. But what really took Lily's breath away was the piano. It sat in the center of the stage under a pool of warm light. The wood gleamed like it had been polished that morning. It was black and beautiful and so perfect it didn't even look real. This was the Steinway Grand the janitor had told her about. Just looking at it made Lily's chest feel tight. Name and age? The director asked without looking up from her papers. Lily Torres. I'm 12. The older man's head snapped up. He stared at Lily with an expression she couldn't quite read. Torres, did you say Torres? Yes, sir. Any relation to Carmen Torres? Lily's throat went dry. Nobody ever asked about her mother. Nobody even knew who her mother had been. She was my mom, Lily said quietly. The 3 judges looked at each other. Something passed between them, some unspoken conversation that Lily couldn't understand. The older man leaned back in his chair, studying her face like he was looking for something. And who teaches you? The silver-haired woman asked, her pen poised over her notepad. This was the question Lily had been dreading. Nobody teaches me. I learned by myself. The words hung in the air for a moment. Then from somewhere behind the curtains at the side of the stage, Lily heard laughter. Quiet at first, then louder. Some of the other kids and their parents had stayed to watch the auditions. They were supposed to be quiet, but they weren't. Self-taught, someone whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. On what, a toy keyboard? This is going to be painful to watch, another voice said. More laughter. Lily's face burned hot. She wanted to run out of the hall, out of the building, all the way back to the street corner where she belonged. But her feet wouldn't move. The director sighed and made a note on her paper. She didn't look mean exactly, just tired, like she'd seen too many kids who weren't good enough and Lily was just going to be another one. Very well, she said. You may begin whenever you're ready. What piece will you be performing? Lily hadn't thought about announcing it. She'd just planned to play. Nocturne in E-flat major, she said. By Chopin. The older man raised his eyebrows. The silver-haired woman wrote something down quickly. Lily walked to the piano on legs that felt like rubber. Each step seemed to take forever. When she finally reached it, she just stood there for a second staring at the keys. They were so white and clean. Perfect. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it slightly, the way she'd seen pianists do in videos. The bench was padded and comfortable, nothing like the hard wooden stool at the church. She could hear more whispers from behind the curtain, more barely hidden giggles. Then she placed her hands on the keys. The ivory was cool and smooth under her fingers. It felt different from the yellowed, chipped keys at the church. These keys were perfect, responsive. She took one breath, then another, trying to calm the wild beating of her heart. Someone coughed loudly from the wings. Someone else made a sound that might have been mocking her nervousness. She heard a woman's voice say something about wasting everyone's time. Lily closed her eyes. In her mind, she went back to that tiny apartment where she'd lived with her mother. She was 6 years old again, and her mother was humming while cooking dinner. The melody was this one, this exact piece. Lily could almost smell the rice and beans on the stove, could almost feel her mother's hand stroking her hair as she hummed. Her fingers found the first notes. The sound that came from the piano was like nothing Lily had ever heard before, rich and full and absolutely pure. The broken church piano had never sounded like this. This instrument sang. The janitor had been right about that. She played the opening phrase of the nocturne and something magical happened. All the fear melted away. Her fingers knew exactly where to go, like they'd been waiting their whole life to touch these keys. The melody flowed out soft and gentle, each note perfectly placed. The laughter from behind the curtain stopped. Lily didn't notice. She was somewhere else now, lost in the music. She played the way her mother had taught her without words, through all those hummed melodies and tapped rhythms on the kitchen table. She played every cold night she'd spent wondering if things would ever get better. She played the empty feeling in her stomach and the hole in her shoe and the way people looked at her like she was invisible. But she also played hope. She played the sunrise after a long night. She played her grandmother's weathered hands holding hers. She played the kindness of the church pastor who let her use the broken piano. She played every small moment of beauty she'd managed to find in a life that wasn't easy. The older judge leaned forward in his seat, his mouth slightly open. The silver-haired woman's pen had stopped moving. The director wasn't looking at her papers anymore. As Lily moved through the middle section of the piece, her fingers dancing across the keys with growing confidence, she forgot about the judges completely. She forgot about the expensive hall and the kids in their perfect clothes. There was only the music, pouring out of her like water from a broken dam. She reached the part where the melody climbs higher, becoming more passionate, and she felt tears starting to form behind her closed eyelids. This was the part her mother used to hum the loudest, the part where her voice would get stronger and clearer. Lily played it the way she remembered it, with all the love and longing her mother had put into those wordless songs. Behind the curtain, the hall had gone completely silent. No whispers, no giggles, not even the sound of breathing. As the piece moved toward its ending, Lily began to do something she hadn't planned. She started to improvise, to add her own voice to Chopin's melody. It just happened naturally, her fingers finding notes that felt right, that felt true. She wove in fragments of other songs her mother had hummed, melodies Lily had created in her head during long sleepless nights. She played about watching beautiful things through windows you couldn't enter. She played about dreams that everyone said were impossible. She played about being poor but not being empty, about having nothing but refusing to give up. The music swelled and fell, dancing between major and minor keys, between joy and sorrow. It told a story without words, her story, every hard moment and every small victory. The Steinway Grand responded to every touch, every subtle shift in pressure, singing with a voice that seemed almost human. When Lily finally played the last soft notes and let them fade into silence, she kept her eyes closed for a moment longer. She wasn't ready to come back to the real world yet. In this moment, with the last echoes of music still hanging in the air, she felt closer to her mother than she had in 5 years. Then she opened her eyes. The 3 judges were staring at her. The older man had tears running down his face. The silver-haired woman was gripping her pen so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The director was standing up, her mouth open like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. From behind the curtain there was absolute silence. The kind of silence that felt heavy, that pressed down on everything. Lily sat frozen on the bench, her hands still resting on the keys. What did this mean? Was it good? Was it bad? She couldn't tell. Nobody was saying anything. Then the silver-haired woman stood up abruptly. Her chair scraped against the floor, the sound harsh in the quiet hall. She walked toward the stage and Lily's heart sank. She was probably going to tell her to leave now, to stop wasting everyone's time. But when the woman reached the stage and climbed the steps, Lily saw that her eyes were wet, actually wet with tears that threatened to spill over. How? the woman whispered, her voice shaking. How is any of this possible? Lily looked up at the silver-haired woman standing on the stage, her voice still echoing in the silent hall. How is any of this possible? She didn't sound angry. She sounded amazed, maybe even a little bit broken, like she'd just witnessed something that didn't make sense according to the rules of the world. I don't understand, Lily said quietly. Her hands were still trembling from playing, her heart still pounding. The older man stood up from behind the judges' table. He walked toward the stage slowly, like his legs weren't quite steady. When he got close enough, Lily could see his face clearly. The tears on his cheeks caught the light. He wasn't trying to hide them. Your mother, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Carmen Torres was my student. 20 years ago, she studied here at this conservatory. Lily's breath caught in her throat. She did? She was one of the most gifted musicians I've ever taught. He continued, climbing the steps to the stage. And I've taught for 40 years. Your mother had something special. It wasn't just technical skill. It was the way she could make you feel every note, the way the music came alive when she played. The director had come around from behind the table too. All three judges were now standing near the piano, forming a small circle around Lily. She felt strange, like she'd stepped into a different world where the rules had changed. What happened to her? The director asked gently. We lost track of Carmen after she left the school. Lily's throat felt tight. Talking about her mother always hurt, like pressing on a bruise that never quite healed. She got pregnant with me. Her family didn't like that. They told her she had to choose between music school and keeping me. She paused, touching the photograph in her pocket. She chose me. The older man, Professor Chen, made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. That sounds exactly like Carmen. She had the biggest heart of anyone I knew. But I never understood why she disappeared. She just stopped coming to class one day. No explanation. No goodbye. Her parents cut her off completely, Lily said. She never talked about it much, but I know they were rich. They told her if she kept me, she was on her own. So she left school and got a job at a restaurant, then another job cleaning offices at night. She did whatever she could to take care of us. The silver-haired woman, Mrs. Patterson, wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. And she still taught you music. She didn't really teach me, Lily said. Not like regular lessons. We couldn't afford a piano or anything. But she'd hum. All the time she'd hum these pieces. While she cooked, while she folded laundry, while she walked me to school. She'd tap out rhythms on tables, on walls, on my hand. She'd explain why certain notes sounded sad and others sounded happy. Professor Chen nodded slowly. She was teaching you without you even knowing it. Building your musical foundation through sound and rhythm and feeling. When I was 7, she got sick, Lily continued. The words came easier now, like they'd been waiting to spill out. The doctors said it was her heart. She worked too hard for too many years, they said. Stress and no money for proper care. She died 6 months later. The hall was so quiet Lily could hear the heating system humming somewhere in the walls. Behind the curtain, where the other kids and parents were hidden, nobody made a sound. They were all listening. After she died, Lily went on, I found her old music books packed away in a box. They were from here, from this school. She'd kept them all those years. I didn't understand most of what was written in them, but I'd look at the notes on the pages and try to imagine what they sounded like. Where do you live now? The director asked softly. With my grandmother. She's my mom's mother. She felt bad about what happened, about making my mom choose. She's old now and doesn't have much, but she took me in. Lily looked down at her worn shoes. We live in a small apartment in the east side. My grandma sells flowers on the street corner and I help her after school. And the piano? Mrs. Patterson asked. You said you taught yourself. Where? There's a church a few blocks from where we live. St. Anthony's. The pastor, Father Miguel, he's really nice. He lets me come in when the church is empty. They have an old piano in the basement that nobody uses anymore. Half the keys stick and it's always out of tune. But Father Miguel said I could practice there whenever I wanted. Professor Chen closed his eyes, shaking his head in disbelief. You learned to play like that on a broken piano? I watched videos at the public library, Lily explained. They have computers you can use for free for 1 hour at a time. I'd watch pianists and try to memorize how their fingers moved. Then I'd go to the church and practice. Sometimes I'd stay there for hours, just playing the same parts over and over until my fingers remembered. How often do you practice? The director asked. Every day. Sometimes twice a day if I can. In the morning before school if Father Miguel is there to unlock the door. And in the evening after I help my grandma. On weekends, sometimes I practice for 5 or 6 hours. Mrs. Patterson let out a long breath. That piece you just played. The Nocturne. That's not an easy piece for someone with formal training. For a self-taught 12-year-old to play it with that level of emotional maturity and technical skill, it's beyond remarkable. It's almost impossible. My mom used to hum that one the most, Lily said, especially near the end when she was really sick. She'd lie in bed and hum it and I'd hold her hand. Sometimes I think it was the only thing that made her feel better. Professor Chen pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his face. In all my years of teaching, I've never heard anyone play with that much genuine emotion. You weren't just playing notes on a page. You were telling a story. Your story. Your mother's story. From behind the curtain, someone sobbed. It sounded like a woman. Maybe one of the mothers who'd been complaining earlier about letting just anyone audition. The sound was quickly muffled, but everyone had heard it. That improvisation at the end, the director said. Where did that come from? Lily shrugged. I don't know. It just happened. Sometimes when I'm practicing alone in the church, I add my own notes to pieces. I hear sounds in my head, melodies that feel right. I don't know if it's correct or if I'm doing it wrong. There's no wrong in music, Professor Chen said firmly. Not when it comes from a place of truth. What you did was compose, right there in the moment. You took Chopin's work and made it your own. Added your voice to it. That's what the greatest musicians do. The director turned to face the curtains where the hidden audience waited. I think everyone here today learned something important, she said, her voice carrying across the hall. Talent doesn't care about expensive clothes or private tutors. It doesn't care about who your parents are or how much money you have. Real talent, true musical gift, it finds a way. Even through broken pianos and borrowed computer time at libraries. She turned back to Lily. When your mother left this school, we lost track of someone extraordinary. But she did something more important than finishing her degree. She passed her gift on to you. And somehow, against all odds, that gift not only survived but flourished. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward. Lily Torres, I was skeptical when you walked onto this stage. I'm ashamed to admit that. I judged you before you played a single note. But what you just did, what you just showed us, is exactly what this scholarship was created for. Raw talent combined with determination, passion, and dedication. Professor Chen nodded in agreement. I've taught hundreds of students. Many of them came from wealthy families, had the best instruments, the best opportunities. But I can count on one hand the students who had what you have. Your mother was one of them. And now you are too. Lily felt dizzy. Were they saying what she thought they were saying? The director smiled for the first time since Lily had entered the hall. We don't need to hear any other auditions. We've found our scholarship recipient. Behind the curtain, someone started clapping. Then another person. Within seconds, the entire hidden audience was applauding. Some of the kids came out from behind the curtain and Lily could see their faces. The 2 girls in matching dresses had tears streaming down their cheeks. The boy who'd made fun of her shoes was clapping so hard his face was red. Their parents stood behind them, many looking embarrassed, others openly crying. The old janitor stood in the back doorway, his cleaning cart forgotten beside him. He was grinning from ear to ear, giving Lily a thumbs up. Lily sat at the piano bench, overwhelmed. She looked down at her hands, still resting on the perfect white keys of the Steinway Grand. These hands that had practiced on broken keys, that had worked alongside her grandmother selling flowers, that had held her mother's hand as she died. These hands had just changed everything. Lily walked out of the conservatory building in a daze. The scholarship papers were folded carefully in her pocket, right next to the photograph of her mother. Her fingers kept touching them to make sure they were real, that this wasn't some dream she'd wake up from. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky orange and pink. She'd been inside for hours. Her grandmother would be worried. Lily started walking faster, her worn sneakers slapping against the wet sidewalk. When she turned the corner onto their street, she saw her grandmother sitting on the stoop outside their apartment building. The old woman's flower cart was parked beside her, almost empty now. She looked tired, her shoulders bent from a long day of standing. Abuela, Lily called out, breaking into a run. Her grandmother looked up and her weathered face broke into a smile. Mija, I was getting worried. How did it go? Lily crashed into her grandmother's arms, the words tumbling out so fast they ran together. I got it. I got the scholarship. They said I can study there for free, everything is free. Piano lessons and music theory, and they even said something about helping with school supplies, and her grandmother pulled back, holding Lily's face in her rough hands. Slow down, slow down. You got it, really? Really, Lily said, tears starting to flow now. They said I was exactly what they were looking for. Professor Chen, he knew Mom, he taught her, abuela. He said she was one of his best students. Her grandmother's eyes filled with tears, too. Your mother would be so proud. So proud. She pulled Lily close again, and they stood there on the sidewalk crying and laughing at the same time. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She lay in the small bed she shared with her grandmother, staring at the ceiling. In 3 weeks, she'd start classes at the conservatory. Real classes with real teachers. She'd get to play on pianos that actually worked. She'd learn things she'd only dreamed about. But more than that, she'd proven something, not just to the judges or the other kids or their parents. She'd proven it to herself, that where you come from doesn't decide where you're going. That dreams don't have to die just because life gets hard. The next morning, Lily woke up early and went to St. Anthony's Church. Father Miguel was already there sweeping the front steps. Good morning, Lily, he said with his usual warm smile. Early practice today? Actually, Lily said, I came to tell you something. She told him about the audition, about the scholarship, about everything. When she finished, Father Miguel set down his broom and hugged her tight. I knew it, he said. From the first day you asked to use that old piano, I knew you had something special. God has big plans for you, child. I wanted to thank you, Lily said, for letting me practice here all this time, for believing in me when nobody else did. You did this yourself, Father Miguel said. I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it. Lily went down to the basement one last time. The old piano sat in the corner, looking even more battered in the morning light. She ran her fingers across the yellowed keys, remembering all the hours she'd spent here. This piano had taught her more than just music. It had taught her patience, determination, and how to find beauty in broken things. She played one last song, a simple melody her mother used to hum. Then she closed the lid gently and whispered, Thank you. The first day at the conservatory was terrifying. Lily wore her best clothes, which still looked shabby compared to everyone else, but she held her head high. She remembered the way the judges had looked at her after she played. She remembered Professor Chen's tears. In her first piano lesson, Professor Chen assigned her a private practice room. It's yours, he said, whenever you need it. The piano in there is a baby grand. Not as big as the one in the audition hall, but it's beautiful, and it's all yours. Lily stood in the doorway of that practice room looking at the gleaming piano, at the music stand, at the comfortable bench. She thought about the church basement, about the broken keys and the out-of-tune strings. She thought about watching videos at the library, about practicing finger positions on her blanket at night. Thank you, she whispered, though she wasn't sure who she was thanking. Her mother, maybe, or the universe, or just the sheer stubborn hope that had kept her going. The other students were different now. Some of them had been at the audition. They'd seen her play. They'd heard her story. The two girls in matching dresses, Katie and Rachel, actually approached her at lunch. We're sorry, Katie said quietly, for laughing at you that day. We were stupid, Rachel added. Our parents always told us that expensive lessons and nice clothes were what mattered. But you showed us that's not true, Lily smiled. It's okay, I get it. You didn't know. Over the following weeks, word spread about the girl who'd taught herself piano on a broken instrument. News reporters wanted to interview her. Local TV stations called, but the conservatory director protected her privacy, only allowing one short newspaper article. The headline read, Street Flower Seller's Daughter Wins. Prestigious scholarship with self-taught talent. Lily's grandmother framed that article and hung it on their apartment wall, right next to the photograph of Lily's mother at the piano. Months passed. Lily threw herself into her studies. Professor Chen was a patient teacher, filling in the gaps in her knowledge while nurturing the raw talent she already had. He taught her proper technique, music theory, the history of composers and their works. But he never tried to change the emotional honesty she brought to every piece. Some things can't be taught, he told her once. What you have, that ability to make people feel the music, that's a gift. My job is just to give you the tools to express it better. One day, about 6 months after she'd started at the conservatory, Professor Chen called Lily into his office. I have something for you, he said. He handed her an old photograph, slightly faded but carefully preserved. In the photo, a young woman sat at a piano, smiling at the camera. She looked so much like Lily it was startling, but she also looked happy in a way Lily had never seen in the photo she carried. This was her mother before life got hard, before she had to choose between her dreams and her daughter. "I took this picture," Professor Chen said, "during your mother's second year here. She was practicing for a recital. She just played something beautiful and I told her to hold still so I could capture that joy." Lily held the photo carefully, her vision blurring with tears. "Your mother made a choice," Professor Chen continued. "She gave up her place here to give you life. Some people might say she sacrificed her dream, but I don't think that's right. I think she transformed her dream. She couldn't play piano anymore, but she made sure the music lived on through you." "I wish she could see this," Lily whispered. "I wish she could know that I made it here." Professor Chen smiled gently. "I think she knows. Wherever she is, I think she knows." That evening, Lily sat at the piano in her practice room. She placed both photographs on the music stand, the old one of her mother that she'd carried all these years, and the new one showing her mother young and full of hope. She began to play. Not a famous piece by a dead composer, but something she'd been working on herself. Her first real composition. It was about a mother and daughter, about sacrifice and love, about broken pianos and impossible dreams. The music flowed from her fingers, telling the story of a woman who gave up everything for her child, and a child who honored that sacrifice by refusing to give up. It was sad and beautiful, painful and hopeful, all at the same time. Years later, Lily would perform at Carnegie Hall. She'd play for presidents and princes, record albums that sold millions of copies, teach the next generation of pianists, but she would never forget where it all started. She'd never forget the broken piano in a church basement. She'd never forget the skeptical faces and mocking laughter. She'd never forget Professor Chen's tears or the janitor's encouraging words. And she'd never forget walking into that conservatory with mud on her shoes and hope in her heart, because that was the day she learned the most important lesson music ever taught her, that where you start doesn't matter nearly as much as refusing to stop. The day after her Carnegie Hall debut, Lily returned to St. Anthony's Church. Father Miguel was older now, moving slower, but his smile was the same. She went down to the basement. The old piano was still there, even more broken now, covered in dust. Lily sat down at the bench and played the same simple melody her mother used to hum. The notes were clunky and out of tune, but they were perfect, because this was where it all began. On the wall above the piano, Father Miguel had hung a small plaque. It read, "Here, a dream refused to die." Lily touched the worn keys one last time, then stood up. She had a master class to teach at the conservatory. Young students waiting to learn from her. Students who would hear her story and understand that talent and determination matter more than privilege and money. As she climbed the basement stairs, sunlight streaming through the church windows, she could almost hear her mother humming. The melody followed her out into the world, a reminder that music, like love, never really ends. It just finds new ways to sing.